Okay, I want to talk to you a little bit about making money outside of computer science. And I know that sounds kind of odd for something that's a computer science class, but I'm going to talk about what you can expect in terms of financial rewards for a job in the computer field. But I'm also going to talk about a little bit on the more practical side about what you can expect if you're not in computer science, or what you can expect if you continue on and you want to create wealth, but you're not going to do it through a computer business. And there are a bunch of reasons for doing it this way. Probably the simplest is that I think over the long term, you may find that, yes, I love programming, but I may want to do something else before my life is over. And sometimes that requires money. Most of us find that taking a tire iron to Safeways does not result in us leaving with 6 bananas. Unless you threaten somebody, and then you have another destination soon awaiting you in the near future. So trading a tire iron in for bananas doesn't work, and mostly we need some money. So let's start with a story. Now, I didn't go through college very fast. I took a decade. I'd already worked some before. So, I was one of those older students by the time I graduated. And then I went off to New York for a couple years, worked on a big computer project, came back, spent a couple years doing artwork at the university. And then I went down to Denver. And after I got down to Denver, I had started another business down there, a consulting company. And one day I was out looking for a piece of rental property, actually for offices for a business. And I ran into somebody that I knew from high school. Now, Don, as he'd prefer to be called now, or Donnie back in high school, Donnie had graduated from high school, went straight to college, gotten a degree in history, gone on to law school, gotten a law degree, moved down to Denver, passed the bar exam, all those good kind of things. He was a good student. And at the end of that, he, is working as a lawyer in a law firm down there. And he was, just the most upbeat person you've ever imagined about the whole thing of becoming a lawyer and practicing law. And he always looked at me like, what, you're going to go work on computers? Why don't you get a real job and go to law school? I think that's an exact quote from him, by the way. But in any case, when I got down there, about a decade has passed, and there is Donnie, and he looks like he is sucking on a pickle. He looks like he's been sucking on a pickle for years. Not just recently. I mean, he's just got a screwed up face, and he just looks mad, and he's dressed real nicely, and I say, Don, how are you doing? And, I stopped to talk to him, and it turns out he's not doing all that well. He's not very happy. And he doesn't really like working in law because, yes, he ended up in that piece of law that maybe some people are happy with. It could be a great thing for some people. But all he's done is divorces and wills for years. And people that are getting a divorce are usually not too happy. And people that need things done with wills are usually not too happy. So he looks like somebody that's been dealing with unhappy people for a decade. And he still hasn't paid off what little he had in college loans. And he's just not a very happy person. So I say to him with a big smile on my face, well, Don, why don't you do something else? And he proceeds to tell me about how, he can't afford to because he has a house mortgage and this and that. And I look at him and I say, you can work your way out of this situation. So I sat down with him. Instead of getting my work done, we actually went and got coffee, got a piece of paper, and we sat down and we went through a plan. Now, the reason I know this plan is because this is the plan that I had already done. So I was already through it, and this was like a second pass of doing the same thing over again. And, if you've already done it once, you can repeat it most of the time. So I sat down with him. He sold his house, moved into a little apartment. His friends laughed at him. He continued to work as a lawyer, and he increased the amount that he was working so he had some more take-home money. He went out, and a year later, he was out of debt. He'd saved some money, And lawyers actually make quite a good amount of income. So a year later, he was in a position to be able to go and buy a little duplex. And it wasn't in the greatest neighborhood, but it was a duplex, and he bought it. And a couple months after that, he got one of the renters to move out, and instead of paying rent, he moved into his own duplex. Now, I'm not a big fan of any of these zero down, instant rich things. Yes, I got him to save enough money that on this duplex, he could put down 43% of the price of the duplex. That meant that basically when he bought it, he had covered his piece of the rent. And the other half of the duplex's rent covered the mortgage, which means he went from paying rent and a mortgage to now breaking even and not having that. And he didn't go out and buy new things. Man, Don, he wanted a Lambo. He wanted a Lamborghini so bad he could taste it. He had pictures up of a Lamborghini from the time I knew him in high school. He wanted a Lambo. This was his dream. And here he was a decade later and he didn't have his Lambo. But now he had a piece of property and he paid off all of his debts. 3 years later, he's finally gotten to the point where, he's now saving enough money that he's getting close to paying off his duplex. I mean, he went from being tied down because he couldn't afford to do anything to, yes, he's actually getting to the point where he's getting to be financially secure because he has no debts. And he's got this place and he's living in it. And yeah, he complains that, the other lawyers think he's crazy because, yes, he went and sold his nice truck that he had and he bought, yes, an old used car. And he's driving around this old used car. It's a reliable car. He got a Honda Accord instead of a truck because he went from a $50,000 vehicle to a $8,000 vehicle. So it's paid for. But he's driving it around. Year 4 comes along, he's saving money, and finally he can buy another place. And he's got enough money saved now after 4 years from his income, the rental income, paying less taxes, because you do that when you're involved in the capitalist system and you own property. There are advantages. And he buys another place. Years are going by. It's 7 years since we met in the parking lot. 7 years. And he now has 2 places paid for. Okay? And he's still looking like a pickle-sucking lawyer because he's still dealing with the divorces. But guess what? He's gotten to the point where his income now off of his rentals, since they're both paid for, is enough that, he doesn't really care anymore about his law practice income. So he works a couple more years. And there is this divorce. Yes, he's still doing divorces. It's bitter. The people own a Lambo, and he gets a Lambo with less than 9,000 miles on it. Yes, he buys it off of them for $48,000 in perfect condition. Now, there is one sad side to this to say, okay? He drove it for 3 weeks, and he found out that he hates Lamborghinis, okay? With a passion. But he did get the Lambo, and he didn't have to pay much for it. And a year later, he sold it for a lot more money. In fact, he sold it for enough more money that with the other money that he had, he got to buy a house. Not on a 30-year mortgage. He bought a house, yes, on the one payment plan. As in, he walked in, looked at this house, it was in a nice neighborhood, and he said, "I'll take it. Here's a check." And he just bought the house. And he moved out of the apartment he'd been living in for 8, 9 years now? Right into a house that he owned, and it was paid for. And he rented out the apartment, and his income went up. So here he was now, looking around going, I've actually created wealth enough that I'm comfortable, and I can live this way. Now, it took years. It actually took him 12 years. He had the house paid for. He had the apartments paid for. And he went, and I talked to him one day. I actually met him near his law office again for coffee, and I talked to him, and I said, "So what are you going to do?" And he said, "I want to own a motorcycle shop, and there's one for sale." And we went through the numbers. It looked like it could make money, especially if there was somebody interested and passionate about running it and making money. So he quit his law practice. He bought a motorcycle shop. He got to buy a truck again, and now he owns a motorcycle shop, which he loves. And he works on motorcycles. He races motorcycles. He took up car racing again. This time he bought Porsches. I've actually driven some of his Porsches in races. And, I never bought the Porsche, but he owns 5 of them now. And he owns 2 motorcycle shops. And he is a happy person. Yes, he did get married in the middle of all of this. And, he has kids, and life went on, and things turned around for him. But these days, you go and see Don, and man, Don has a smile on his face all the time. I mean, he is just a happy person because he figured out, yes, if he participated in the capitalist system instead of working in a law firm, that there were big advantages, and he actually got to make some money and do some things he wanted to do. And it took him 12 years, roughly speaking, maybe 13 years, to turn around his situation and get to where he wanted to be. Now, I had already done the same thing. I'm, to some degree, helping one of my relatives do this right now, go through this same process and work through it, and it takes years. But if you do it, and you don't get into any of these zero money down, high risk things, and you pay enough money so that if you have an apartment and one of the units is empty for 2 months, or you have to remodel something, you just go, oh, well, it's no big deal. I'll do this. Learn how to do your own maintenance. There are YouTube videos on everything these days. And just work through the system. Before long, what you'll find is, yes, your friends will laugh at you at your old car and if you live in a tiny little apartment someplace or something like that. But one of these days you get revenge. Because guess what? One day you will be living in a nice place and you will be wealthy because you've used the capitalist system to your advantage. Now, I want to talk a little bit about that scenario and a little bit about computer science and what you can expect out of computer science. Now, in computer science, you should expect that, the national average for a COSI graduate is $78,000 a year starting salary. We do a little bit better here at the University of Wyoming. I think my calculation said it was $82,000. If you go on for a master's, and I actually recommend that here, it is economical enough to continue on for a master's that you can do this and you can increase your starting salary by about $20,000 a year. And that increase is relatively permanent. I've done the research in the Bureau of Labor Statistics data, and you will continue to make more money throughout your career for at least 10, if not 20 years, and it will more than pay back for itself. The average amount of student loans coming out of the University of Wyoming is $22,800, so let's assume that you have an average amount and you have to pay it off. Now, if you leave college and you go out and get some loans, and you buy a bunch of stuff, and you've got credit cards and you buy a car, you're not paying off your loans. But let's say you do what Donnie did, and you live economically and you pay off all your debts, starting with that debt for your college education. Pay it completely off, all your credit cards. If you've got an expensive car and you're paying on it, go get a cheap one. Not cheap as in bad quality. Get something good quality, like a Honda Accord or a Toyota that has a good maintenance record, so you're not paying a bunch of money on it. And yeah, it's a beater on your ego. Your friends will laugh at you. But guess what? You're saving money. And with the income you get, you can expect about a 6% raise for about 6 years. About a 2% per year raise for 6 years. And with that 2% to 3% raise for 6 years, you'll make somewhere around $102,000 to $103,000 a year with a bachelor's. That's pretty good money. You're going to pay about 30% taxes. And we could wander through the calculations for the taxes, but let's not worry about that. And let's say, okay, you live on this, you get yourself an average apartment in most places in the big cities is $1,450 a month. So you live economically, you don't spend a lot of money on entertainment, and you save money. In about 2 to 3 years, saving money, paying everything off, if you're careful about what you're doing, you can probably have enough money to put down on a duplex of your own. And put 40 to 60% down, nothing too fancy, but look at what neighborhood it's in. Don't get yourself a crime neighborhood. Pay attention and figure out what you're going to get that's going to be decent. Even if it takes you another year or two to wait until you've got enough money to buy something decent. And then move into it, get rid of the $1,400 a month bill. You now own the place. You get to take the tax advantages of this. Your tax rate will go down if you're careful about how you handle your taxes, and pay it off as quickly as you can. And then save some money. Now suddenly you'll have income coming in, you don't have as much expenses going out, and you buy something like a 3-plex or a 4-plex after that. Somewhere out there, about 12 years, you will find that you will have bought enough stuff and worked it and worked the system and gotten enough rental that basically the rental would cover your expenses. And maybe, you want to move to a different place in the country. The nice thing about buying rental property is you don't have a house to tie you down. Okay? You can get somebody to manage your rental property. Yeah, real estate agents charge a boatload for doing that. It's like 10% of your rent. But you do, and you can set this up in an afternoon with a phone call if you want to move someplace else. So if you suddenly find that you want to get that job in Hawaii and it pays good, and you want to move from Illinois to Hawaii, oh, okay, I'll take it. I'll call a real estate agent. We'll move. We're ready to go. You try doing that with a house, it's not going to be a pretty picture. So the combination of these things, your ability to move, the fact that you're creating a business and learning how a business works and making income from it, you will make more money. And if the place that you're working suddenly has layoffs for whatever reason, your friends are going to be sweating it. We got laid off. If you're not dependent on your job for your income, you'll be going, maybe I'll take 6 months off and go do that thing I always wanted to do. A trip to the Himalayas sounds like a good idea. I've actually done that one. So, it removes stress from your life. And if you do it a couple more years, you will get to the point where you have enough income, and I can show you the mathematical models. We could sit down with Excel. You'll have enough income that, by golly, you want to retire? You can. You want to take a different job? You can. You want to go work for the United Nations for half the money because it's doing something that you're passionate about? You have that choice. You've created freedom and choice by being in the capitalist system and employing it to your advantage. And once you've done that, it helps with other things. Now, the last time I built a business, we got in really dire financial straits. 9/11 happened. We basically lost all funding. And for 9 months, I was able to, because I had outside income, I wasn't taking a salary for 9 months, I was able to fund the business and keep it alive. That 9/11 put our two biggest competitors under because, they couldn't do that. And, eventually that turned into a good amount of money for me. But what really made the difference was the fact that, I want to take a year off and not have any income. In fact, I want to pay my CEO's mortgage and his car payments at the same time. I had that choice available to me. I could do that out of my own pocket. So these are the kinds of things that having some financial backing gives you choice. It gives you opportunities. And, we live in a capitalist society. If you want to create wealth, the opportunity is there. And it isn't just, you have to do apartments. I've made money in apartments. I've made money in the stock market by learning how to invest effectively. I've done other things. I've bought and sold businesses. These things, all of them, if you learn how to do them and you work with a system, it's great. Now, what's going to happen in your computer career? You start out at $78,000 a year. You're going to peak in about 6 years. Maybe you want to keep working in it like I did for decades. Maybe you go, you know what? I'm tired of being on this treadmill and I want to do something else. But if you handle your money correctly beforehand, you'll get in a position where you have the choice of doing something else and moving on to being and doing other things. And maybe that isn't important. Maybe, you're going to be like me, old and thrilled to be programming. You don't know. But my recommendation is that, as you go along, you make money, make money, you save. And I know these are dull, boring topics like, I'm saving money. This is not entertaining. Remember to save some money and remember to spend some money on entertainment, especially travel. It creates good memories, and that is more valuable than any set of trinkets that you can buy. Okay, and I include trinkets in cars and fancy things, but it gives you choice and it gives you the capability of doing other things. Now, computer science is a phenomenally good field to be in. We can make as much money in computer science as a doctor does with 18 years of college education. And that is an incredibly good thing. And most fields in the STEM field turn out that they are going to end up doing computer stuff anyhow. The Bureau of Labor Statistics says that 87%, or was it 89? I'd have to look again. One of those percent of all the people in all of STEM end up programming. The difference is that you get a computer science degree and you make more money at the programming than they do. They probably got, some of them, a harder degree, to tell you the truth. Not that computer science is somehow a really easy degree. Software engineering is a pretty hard field. It's a technical field. It requires some effort, and I understand that. But we make more money at it. Now, you peak out there about 7-8 years, and if you want to make more money, then you're probably going to want to get away from having a job directly and set up your own consulting business. So develop some specialization in some particular thing and find out if you can build a consulting business in it. I certainly did. You make more money doing consulting work. Before I was here at the university teaching, I had a consulting job and I was working very hard at it, I must admit. And I was thrilled and it was exciting and I was loving what I was doing. And I was making $16,000 a month. Remember, the average person in the United States, I was making as much as that average person every 2 months. So, there is some money involved in this, and this can be a very lucrative and fun thing. And you're always working on new stuff. You don't know what you're going to be working on, but it's always an opportunity to go out and learn something completely new that you knew nothing about, and it is not boring. You are not stuck like my friend out there in Oregon, that for a decade he worked in a sawmill, and he was the internal mill driver that picked up the load of logs over here, drove it down there to the other yard, to yard 2, dumped it off. Then he drove back, picked up another load, drove down. Drove up the road, drove down the road, drove up the road, drove down the road, drove up. It's just not that entertaining a job. Computer science is not like that. It's always new and different. So with that, that's one of the ways that you can go out and make money outside of the computer field. And there are plenty. It is not like this world doesn't have opportunities. We are in the most prosperous country in the world with a slew of them. So I hope you find something that you are interested in doing. And I hope it is lucrative like crazy. All right, we'll catch you later.